On Stoicism Breath, there is one truth most people never fully understand until they have already wasted years of their lives, and that truth is this: your attention is one of the most valuable forms of power you possess. It is the invisible currency behind your peace, your energy, your clarity, and ultimately the direction of your life. Yet so often, people spend it carelessly. They hand it over to criticism, to conflict, to people who drain them, and to situations that never deserve that kind of access in the first place. And the more freely you give your attention away, the less power it seems to hold. Because every time you react to what pulls at you from the outside, you allow something external to take control of what should belong to you. Just think about how often this happens in daily life. A harsh comment, a disrespectful tone, a misunderstanding. Someone says something that touches a nerve, and instantly you feel that inner pressure rise. You want to answer. You want to explain yourself. You want to defend your dignity, prove your point, regain control of the moment. But pause for a second and ask a deeper question. Why do their words carry so much force? Why does one sentence from another person have the power to disturb your entire inner world? The answer is not only in what they said. It is in the meaning you gave it. It is in the emotional weight you attach to it. Often, what hurts us most is not the event itself, but the story we tell ourselves about what that event means. We react because part of us believes that if we stay silent, we lose something. Maybe respect, maybe control, maybe the image we want others to have of us. But Stoicism offers a completely different way of seeing this. It teaches that the moment you react without awareness, you have already surrendered your power. The moment you allow another person's behavior to dictate your emotional state, they are no longer just speaking to you, they are controlling you. And that is why real strength is not found in overpowering others. It is found in governing yourself. This is the quiet lesson at the heart of Stoicism. You may not control what others say, what they do, or how they behave, but you always retain the ability to choose your response. And in that choice lies your freedom. Because in the moments when everything inside you wants to lash out, there is a rare kind of power in remaining steady. There is dignity in choosing calm over chaos, silence over impulse, restraint over reaction. Not because you are weak, not because you have nothing to say, but because you understand that not every situation deserves access to your peace. Most people do not even realize how often they give their power away. Think about the arguments that never mattered. The criticism that should have passed through you but stayed in your mind all day. The accusation you kept replaying in your head. The tension that grew only because you chose to feed it. How often did reacting improve anything? How often did it truly restore peace? More often than not, reacting adds fuel to the fire. It pulls you into drama that would have burned out on its own if you had simply refused to feed it. It makes you part of the chaos instead of the calm that rises above it. And that is why the peace you create by not responding is so much more valuable than the brief satisfaction of being right. Because being right for a moment means very little if it costs you your emotional balance for the rest of the day. So many people let someone else's words ruin their mood, their focus, even their sense of self. And without realizing it, they allow another person's behavior to shape their entire inner experience. Stoicism does not teach you to become passive. It does not ask you to be a doormat. It does not tell you to let people walk over you. What it teaches is discernment, the ability to step back and decide which battles are truly worth your energy, and which ones are merely distractions disguised as importance. Not every confrontation deserves a response. Not every insult deserves your time. Not every challenge deserves your emotional investment. One of the greatest forms of maturity is learning that strength is not in reacting to everything. It is in choosing wisely. Imagine if every time you were provoked, you responded with silence, not because you were powerless, but because you had learned the power of timing, perspective, and self-command. That kind of silence is not emptiness. It is discipline. It is awareness. It is a statement that says, without words, I decide what deserves my energy. And that is where your life begins to change. Because what you allow to occupy your mind will shape the quality of your life. If you give your attention to every insult, every criticism, every slight, you are training your mind to live in negativity. But if you begin withholding your attention from what does not serve you, you build emotional resilience. You create space between yourself and the noise. You stop absorbing everything. You stop reacting to everything. And in that space, you begin to reclaim your peace, your focus, and your power. That is the beginning of self-mastery. That is the beginning of freedom. And that is the path Stoicism Breath invites you to walk. Not the path of louder reactions, but the path of deeper control. On Stoicism Breath, there's a powerful idea most people overlook. Your life is shaped by what you allow into your mind. Not occasionally, not randomly, but consistently. Every insult you replay, every criticism you hold on to, every negative comment you give attention to, you are feeding it. You are reinforcing it. And over time, that becomes the lens through which you see the world. But something shifts the moment you choose differently. The moment you stop giving your attention to what drains you, you begin to build something incredibly valuable, emotional resilience. You create a space between you and the chaos. A buffer. A boundary. And in that space, you finally start to breathe again. Now think about the people you truly respect. Not the loudest voices in the room. Not the ones constantly trying to prove something. But those quiet, grounded individuals who seem unshaken no matter what's happening around them. What is it about them? It's not arrogance. It's not indifference. It's control. They don't react to everything. They don't chase every opinion. They don't get pulled into every emotional storm. Instead, they observe. They stay centered. And that quiet confidence, it speaks louder than any argument ever could. This is what emotional detachment really means. Not becoming cold. Not shutting people out. But learning to observe without getting entangled. Learning to decide where your energy goes instead of letting the world decide for you. Because at its core, Stoicism is not about winning arguments or always being right. It's about mastering yourself. It's about protecting your inner peace even when the outside world feels chaotic. It's about choosing your response instead of reacting on impulse. And here's where it becomes transformative. When you start practicing this consistently, ignoring stops being avoidance and becomes a form of mental freedom. Imagine walking through life no longer controlled by other people's opinions. No longer reacting to every emotional trigger. No longer being pulled in every direction by distractions. Instead, you move with intention. You decide what matters. You choose what deserves your attention. And everything else? It fades into the background. Because the truth is, the world will always test you. People will challenge you. Situations will provoke you. That will never stop. But what changes is you. You are no longer the person who reacts automatically. You become the person who chooses. And that shift changes everything. You are no longer a puppet responding to external forces. You become the one directing your own internal state. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. Emotional mastery is a process. It requires awareness. It requires catching yourself in those small moments, when you're about to react, about to argue, about to defend, and choosing a different path. Again and again. Until it becomes natural. Until calm becomes your default instead of chaos. And something remarkable happens along the way. The less you react to the world, the more clarity you gain. The more energy you reclaim. The more your life begins to align with what truly matters. Your growth, your purpose, your peace of mind. As Marcus Aurelius said, the happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. And when you stop handing your attention to everything that disturbs you, you begin to shape those thoughts consciously. You start responding from strength, not weakness. You realize something most people never do, that the world can throw anything at you, But you don't have to catch it. You don't have to carry it. The noise becomes just noise. Not your identity. Not your reality. And this is the deeper truth behind the art of ignoring. It's not about disconnecting from life. It's about engaging with it on your terms. It's about being fully present, but not emotionally controlled by everything that passes through your day. It's about protecting your mental space like it matters, because it does. So ask yourself this: how much of your energy is being spent reacting, arguing, explaining, defending, justifying? What if you didn't have to? What if you could step out of that cycle completely? Because the people who constantly demand your attention, who thrive on your reactions, they only continue because you keep responding. But the moment you stop, the moment you withdraw that attention, everything changes. That's the moment you take your power back. On Stoicism Breath, there's a quiet truth most people never fully realize. Some people don't actually want peace, they want a reaction. They feed off it. Every time you respond emotionally, every time you defend yourself, argue back, or try to prove a point, you're giving them exactly what they came for. And without even noticing, you hand over control. But something powerful happens the moment you stop. The moment you choose silence, not out of weakness, but out of awareness, you break the cycle. You send a message without saying a word: you don't control me. And in that moment, something shifts, not just in them, but within you. Think about it. How often have you felt pulled into unnecessary drama, only to walk away feeling drained? Now imagine choosing differently. Imagine pausing instead of reacting. Letting the moment pass instead of escalating it. That silence, it's not empty. It's intentional. It's strength. Because when you refuse to engage, you're no longer a participant in someone else's chaos. You become grounded. You become free. And in that freedom, you start to rediscover who you are without the noise. It's interesting, isn't it? We've been conditioned to believe that silence means weakness. That if you don't respond, you lose. But the opposite is often true. Silence can be one of the most powerful tools you have. People expect you to react. They expect you to argue, to explain, to justify yourself. But when you don't, you change the entire dynamic. You're no longer playing their game. You're choosing your own. And here's where it gets even more fascinating. When you stop reacting, people notice. They become confused. Maybe even uncomfortable. They start wondering why you're not engaging the way you used to. And that uncertainty? It weakens their influence. Because without your reaction, their words lose weight. Their attempts to provoke you fall flat. It's like a fire without fuel. It simply can't keep burning. But the real transformation isn't just external. It's internal. Every time you resist the urge to react, you're training yourself. You're building emotional discipline. You're proving something deeply important, not to the world, but to yourself, that your peace matters more than temporary validation. That your energy is too valuable to be wasted on things that don't deserve it. And over time, this becomes natural. You start to notice a shift. You no longer feel the need to respond to everything. You stop giving your time to people who don't respect it. You stop investing energy into situations that only drain you. Instead, you begin to reclaim something you may not even realize you lost: your focus, your clarity, your control. The beauty of this practice is its simplicity. You don't need the perfect words. You don't need to win arguments. You don't need to prove anything. Sometimes, the most powerful move is to do nothing at all, to simply not engage. Because your mind is your most valuable asset. And the moment you stop allowing others to control it, you take back ownership of your life. But this goes deeper than just dealing with people. It's also about how you see yourself. How often do we look outward for validation? How often do we let other people's opinions define how we feel? When you begin to withdraw your attention from that external noise, something changes. You start turning inward. You begin to trust yourself again. You begin to rely on your own standards, your own values, your own sense of worth. This is what the Stoics understood so well. A peaceful life doesn't come from being accepted by everyone. It comes from being aligned with yourself. When you stop chasing approval, you stop giving away your power. You stop needing permission to feel worthy. And instead, you build something far more stable, an inner foundation that no one can shake. So the next time you feel that urge to react, to defend, to prove, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Because the truth is, you don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need their approval to be at peace. And the moment you truly understand that, is the moment you become free. On Stoicism Breath, there's a powerful shift that begins the moment you choose not to react. It might seem small at first, just a pause, a breath, a decision to stay silent, but in that moment, you're doing something most people never learn to do. You're protecting your peace. More than that, you're training your mind. Because every time you resist the urge to respond impulsively, you're not just avoiding drama, you're building self-discipline at a deeper level. You're teaching yourself to remain steady in a world that constantly tries to shake you. Think about how often your mood has been influenced by something minor, a comment, a message, a look. Now imagine what your life would feel like if those things no longer had that power over you. That's what this practice leads to. It's not about ignoring reality or pretending things don't matter. It's about becoming so grounded in who you are that the noise around you loses its ability to disturb you. As Seneca once pointed out, it's not that life is short. It's that we waste so much of it reacting to things that don't deserve our time or energy. And when you really see that, something changes. You stop giving your attention away so freely. Instead, you begin to invest it. You start directing it toward what actually moves your life forward, your growth, your goals, your well-being. And here's the interesting part. Every time you hold back from reacting, you take a piece of yourself back. You reclaim your focus. You reclaim your energy. And over time, you'll notice that you don't feel the need to react as much anymore. The opinions of others lose their grip on you. The need for validation fades. And what replaces it is freedom. The freedom to walk your own path without being pulled in every direction. But let's be honest for a moment. Not everyone you encounter wants peace. Some people thrive on attention. They provoke, they push, they create tension, not always because they hate you, but because they need a reaction to feel something. It's human nature to seek validation, but for some, that need turns into manipulation. And when you keep responding, you unknowingly reinforce that behavior. You teach them that they can control how you feel. But what happens when you stop? Imagine hearing a dog barking in the distance. You notice it, but you don't let it ruin your day. Now imagine treating certain people the same way. Not out of disrespect, but out of awareness. Their words become background noise, something that exists, but doesn't control you. The moment you stop engaging, something powerful happens. Their influence weakens. The dynamic shifts. And suddenly, you're no longer trapped in their game. This isn't about becoming cold or distant. It's about changing your perspective. It's about realizing that not everything deserves your attention. Not every opinion matters. Not every battle is worth fighting. When someone tries to pull you into conflict, you don't have to grab the rope. You can simply let go. And when you do, you free yourself instantly. No struggle. No exhaustion. Just space. Space to breathe, to think, to focus on what actually matters. Picture this. Someone insults you, tries to provoke you, expects a reaction. In the past, you might have felt that surge of emotion, that need to respond. But now you pause. You observe. You let it pass. And in doing so, you take your power back. Because the more you engage, the more control they have. But the moment you stop, that control disappears. And that's where true strength begins. Not in winning arguments. not in proving people wrong, but in mastering yourself, in choosing calm over chaos, in deciding that your energy is too valuable to be wasted on things that don't serve you. When you reach that point, your life starts to change in subtle but powerful ways. You become more focused, more intentional, more at peace. You begin to realize something most people overlook. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to carry every opinion, every insult, every piece of negativity. You get to choose what stays and what goes. And in that choice, you reclaim your life. On Stoicism Breath, something shifts the moment you stop giving your energy away so freely. You begin to notice it almost immediately. You're no longer drained by every little distraction, every unnecessary conflict, every demand for your attention. Instead, you start investing that energy into something far more valuable, yourself. Your growth, your peace, your purpose. And that's where real self-control begins. Not in forcing the world to change, but in choosing what you engage with, and what you simply let pass. Because the truth is, chaos isn't going anywhere. People will still test you. Situations will still challenge you. Life will still try to pull you in 100 different directions. But when you learn the art of ignoring what doesn't serve you, something powerful happens. You become the calm in the middle of that storm. You become steady, grounded, unshaken. And in that calmness, you discover a strength that doesn't depend on circumstances. A strength that comes from within. Think about your daily life. It's not always the big moments that throw you off. It's the small ones. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A passive-aggressive comment slips into a conversation. A message triggers irritation. In those moments, you have a choice. You can react, or you can pause. And that pause, that's where your power lives. A single breath. A moment of awareness. Choosing not to be pulled into something that doesn't deserve your energy. And the more you practice that, the more natural it becomes. You stop feeding the noise. You stop participating in unnecessary drama. And slowly, your life starts to feel different, more intentional, more focused, more yours. You begin to realize that not everything requires your attention. Not everything deserves your response. Now here's something most people don't talk about. When you stop being available to everything and everyone, your value changes. People start to notice. Because in a world where everyone is constantly giving, constantly reacting, constantly seeking attention, the person who holds back stands out. Not because they're playing games, but because they understand something deeper. Value is tied to scarcity. If you're always available, always responding, always giving your time away, there's nothing rare about your presence. But when you become selective, when you reserve your energy for what truly matters, you become different. You become intentional. Like something valuable. Something not easily accessed. And naturally, people are drawn to that. Think of it this way. A rare gem isn't valuable because it's loud. It's valuable because it's scarce, because it's protected, because not everyone can have it. Your attention works the same way. Not everyone deserves it. Not every situation has it. And when you start treating your time and energy like something precious, everything changes. This doesn't mean you become cold or distant. It means you become aware. You become selective. You begin to ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Does this align with who I'm becoming? And if the answer is no, you let it go. Because at the end of the day, your attention is a reflection of who you are. Where you place it defines your life. If you give it to everything, it loses value. But if you choose it carefully, if you invest it wisely, it becomes one of your greatest strengths. And that's the shift. From reacting to choosing. From giving everything away, to owning where your energy goes. From chaos to control. On Stoicism Breath, one of the most powerful realizations you can have is this. Your time is not something you owe to the world, it's something you choose to give. And the moment you truly understand that, everything begins to change. You stop feeling obligated to respond to every message, every demand, every situation that tries to pull you in. Instead, you begin to move through life with a quiet sense of control, a calm awareness that your attention is yours to direct. Imagine walking through your day without feeling dragged into unnecessary conversations, arguments, or emotional chaos. Imagine knowing that you don't have to react to everything, that you can simply observe, decide, and move on. That's what real control looks like. And interestingly, when people see that you're no longer easily swayed, no longer reacting to every little thing, something shifts in how they see you. They begin to respect you more. Not because you're louder, but because you're grounded. Because you're no longer part of the noise, you stand outside of it. But the most important shift doesn't happen in others. It happens within you. You stop seeing yourself as someone who must always be available, always giving, always proving your worth through how much you do for others. And instead, you begin to understand something deeper. Your worth isn't measured by how much you give, but by how intentionally you choose to give, and to whom. You realize you don't have to be the person who fixes everything. You don't have to be everyone's go-to solution. And when you stop trying to be everything for everyone, you create space. Space to grow, space to breathe, space to focus on what actually matters. Your goals. Your peace. The relationships that truly support and uplift you. Suddenly, you have the time and energy to invest in a life that aligns with your values instead of constantly reacting to someone else's expectations. Now, let's be honest, this shift isn't easy. If you spent years being the one who always shows up, always responds, always gives, stepping back can feel uncomfortable, even wrong at times. But like any form of discipline, it gets easier with practice. And as you continue, you begin to notice the difference. You feel lighter, less drained, less overwhelmed, more in control of your own life. And then comes the most powerful realization of all. You start to see just how much of your energy was being spent on things that never truly deserved it. And with that awareness comes freedom. Freedom from constantly reacting. Freedom from trying to meet every expectation. Freedom from feeling like you have to be everything for everyone. From that freedom, something deeper emerges, peace. A steady, grounded kind of peace that doesn't depend on what others do or say. And from there, you begin to prioritize your energy differently. You give it to what truly matters. And in doing so, you don't just gain respect from others, you gain respect from yourself. You start living life on your own terms. Not driven by pressure, not controlled by demands, but guided by your own values. Because your attention is yours. And when you learn that you don't have to give it away, you take your power back. Now you might wonder, what about the people who genuinely need you? What about real connection? Isn't it cold to hold back? And that's where the deeper understanding comes in. True connection isn't about constantly giving your energy to everyone. It's about mutual respect. It's about balance. It's about giving where it's valued, where it's returned, where it's meaningful. Because when you continuously give your attention to those who only take, you don't lift them up. You slowly diminish yourself. But when you choose to hold back, you're not rejecting them. You're protecting something essential, your peace, your mental space, your emotional well-being. And here's the subtle shift that changes everything. When you stop reacting to someone's behavior, you remove what they were relying on, your reaction. And in that silence, they are left with something they often avoid themselves. Without your emotional response to validate them, they are forced to reflect, to see their actions more clearly. That's the power of not engaging. It's quiet, it's subtle, but it's incredibly strong. Because in choosing not to react, you remain in control. On Stoicism Breath, there's a moment of quiet power that most people overlook. The moment when you choose not to react. Because in that silence, something subtle but profound happens. The person trying to provoke you no longer gets what they came for. No reaction. No emotional payoff. no validation. And suddenly, they're left alone with something they've been avoiding, themselves. Think about it. People who constantly create drama, who manipulate, who provoke, they depend on your reaction to feel in control. They've learned, over time, that your emotions can be triggered, that your peace can be disturbed. But the moment you stop feeding that pattern, the entire dynamic shifts. Their words lose weight. Their behavior loses influence. And without your response, they are forced to reflect on their own actions in a way they never had to before. As Carl Jung once suggested, the things that irritate us about others often reveal something deeper, either about them or about ourselves. And when you choose not to react, you create space. Space for clarity. Space for awareness. Not just for them, but for you. You begin to see patterns more clearly. You start recognizing when someone is trying to pull you into a space that doesn't serve your peace. And that's the key. This isn't about shutting people out or avoiding life. It's about setting boundaries. Invisible, powerful boundaries around your emotional energy. Because not everyone who seeks your attention deserves it. Not every conversation is honest. Not every connection is healthy. And once you see that, you stop reacting automatically. You start choosing intentionally. Instead of letting someone else dictate how you feel, you begin to decide where your energy goes. And when you withdraw your attention from people who drain you, you're not punishing them, you're protecting yourself. You're choosing to invest your time and energy into what actually nourishes you. Into relationships that are built on respect. Into a life that feels balanced and aligned. Now here's where it gets interesting. When you stop reacting, people notice. Especially those who once relied on your reactions. They may push harder. Try new ways to provoke you. But this time, you see it differently. You recognize it for what it is, an attempt to regain control over your emotions. And instead of getting pulled in, you remain steady. That realization alone is incredibly freeing. Because the more you practice this, the more you start to see just how often you are being influenced without even realizing it. And with that awareness comes something powerful, control. Not over others, but over yourself. Over your emotional state. Over your attention. You begin to understand that you are the one who decides what deserves your energy, and that's where real strength comes in. Not in arguing. Not in proving a point. But in choosing not to engage. In protecting your peace without needing to explain it. In becoming emotionally untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because you've learned what's worth your reaction and what isn't. This kind of mastery doesn't happen overnight. It's built through practice. Through moments where you pause instead of react. Where you observe instead of engage. And over time, something changes. You start to see people more clearly. Not through the lens of emotion, but through awareness. You stop taking everything personally. You begin to see criticism, comments, and negativity for what they really are, external noise. And when you stop giving that noise your attention, it loses its power completely. What once felt overwhelming now feels distant. What once triggered you now passes by without impact. And in that silence, something unexpected emerges, peace. A quiet, steady peace that doesn't depend on what others say or do. A sense of control that comes from within. And the beauty of it is, this is always available to you. You don't need special tools. You don't need perfect conditions. All it takes is a choice. The choice to stop reacting, to stop feeding the chaos, and to start protecting your inner world. And as you continue to practice, you'll feel the shift. You'll stop feeling drained by others. You'll start feeling energized by your own decisions. You'll realize that no matter what's happening around you, you have control over how you respond. But here's where the deeper layer begins. Because the real challenge isn't just ignoring external noise, it's learning to ignore the noise within. That constant voice in your mind. The doubts. The fears. The insecurities that quietly demand your attention. How often do you replay mistakes in your head? How often do you worry about what others think? How often do you let those thoughts take over your mental space? In many ways, that internal noise is even more powerful than anything happening outside of you, because it follows you everywhere. And just like external drama, the more you engage with it, the more control it has over you. But what if you didn't? What if, instead of feeding those thoughts, you simply observe them and let them pass? That's emotional intelligence at its core. The ability to step back from your own mind and not be consumed by it. To recognize patterns of thinking without reacting to them. To understand that not every thought deserves your attention. And yes, it takes practice. It takes patience. But over time, something incredible happens. The noise starts to quiet down. The thoughts lose their intensity. And in that space, you begin to find clarity, focus, peace. You begin to free yourself from the constant pressure of your own mind. And when that happens, everything changes.